Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of Soccer for Us. I am Bart, and on this episode, we are talking about the roster of 23 male US eligible players who are going to take on Germany and Ghana in friendlies in the October 2023 window. Two big opponents, and we have what I believe is probably a first choice roster with the available best players we have. To talk more about this roster and our opponents this month, it is my friend and the greatest historian of U.S. soccer on Twitter, Thomas, aka US Keeper. Thomas, it feels like this might be a pretty darn good roster.
Yeah, it's nice to see it. I say it's been a long time coming, but you have to build to this, right? Age, experience, all coming together in a roster versus two decent opponents. So it's good to see. I'm excited for everything to kick off next week and get this camp underway and see what this group can do.
Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, talking about how it took a while to get to this grouping, right? Um, this is the second friendly window in a row that I think we've seen probably the strongest selection that we could have got. I mean, obviously there are injuries, and obviously there are some players who, well, maybe just one player who just quite honestly is not going to be called back up ever again. It seems like, but it seems like this group is the best group we could get. And like I said, two in a row. That feels like we're moving somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to have this, that continuity built in here, core group of players, core team surrounded by maybe a couple, newer faces once in a while and players that aren't receiving the caps. I think it's really important to have that consistency, window to window.
Well, let's talk about the players that are on here and a couple of the surprises from this roster. But first, let's just go through the roster as a whole. Goalkeepers, only two: Ethan Horvath from Nottingham Forest and Matt Turner, also from Nottingham Forest. Defenders are Cameron Carter-Vickers from Celtic, Serginho Dest from PSV Eindhoven, Dewan Jones from the New England Revolution, Christopher Lund from Palermo, Tim Ream from Fulham, Chris Richards from Crystal Palace, Miles Robinson from Atlanta United, and Joe Scally from Borussia Mönchengladbach. The midfielders are Johnny Cardoso from Internacional, Luca De La Torre from Celta Vigo, Leonard Maloney, a newcomer from Heidenheim, Weston McKennie from Juventus, Yunus Musa from AC Milan, Gio Reyna from Borussia Dortmund, and Malik Tillman from PSV Eindhoven. And up top, six guys: Brendan Aronson from Union Berlin, Valerian Balogun from Monaco, Kevin Paredes from Wolfsburg, Ricardo Pepi from PSV Eindhoven, Christian Pulisic from AC Milan, and Tim Weah from Juventus. So that's 23 players. No additions. We got to 23 exactly. Um, but let's talk about maybe the biggest surprise of the roster. You and I chatted a little bit about this on Twitter, but only two goalkeepers. Does that what does that say to you?
Well, I mean, I think it says that these two are clearly 1 and 2, for US for sure. And I think, with, a U23 camp, I'm assuming Gaga and maybe Brady will be in that camp, kind of filling out, the younger side of it. And, there are some MLS games in this window where some of the keepers probably, want to stay with their clubs. But yeah, I don't, I mean, you could have easily brought a Sean Johnson, maybe. I don't know what his club situation is. I didn't even check because, frankly, he's not on my radar anymore. But, I think, I mean, it's just, I think it's just clear. I mean, that these two right now are 1-2, and I think the third spot's up for grabs, which is kind of good. I think it's good to have that battle there. And trust me, if you can get to the third spot and be consistent there, you can easily jump into the second spot. So,
Mm-hmm.
good opportunity for these keepers to kind of push one a little bit, to kind of jockey for placement on the roster.
Yeah, I don't know particularly who I like. I was trying to go through my head and go, okay, who would I really want to be that third keeper right now? And there just really isn't a guy who jumps off the page as the for sure third goalkeeper, other than who you mentioned, Gaga Slonina, who I think is very clear Granted, we'll find out when that roster comes out, but he's very clearly in that U23 group. He's not a senior team player yet, and that's fine because we have an Olympics to worry about next summer, and I think that's good for him to kind of keep his eyes set on that. You do mention, some of the MLS games happening. We do have 2 games on Saturday, October 14th, and a game on Wednesday, October 18th. DeJuan Jones for New England will be missing, I guess, that game on September 14th. They play Nashville in Nashville. And then Inter Miami, who is probably maybe what we were thinking of with Drake Callender possibly being the call up, he would play on that Wednesday. It's not possible that he couldn't have, come to train with the team, but, we even saw him last camp get called in, train, but then go back and play for Miami. So I guess he just didn't want to have to do that this time. But to your point, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a depth issue just so much as it's there's no one who's that number 3 right now.
Yeah, I think you're kind of in between, when you talk about goalies, the goalies are getting into their prime ages, right? I mean, Stefan is clearly injured. We haven't heard anything of him. So he's clearly recovering from some sort of injury. I believe it was a knee injury that's this summer. And then you have, Calendar, Celentano are kind of the 2 other ones that we've seen a little bit and made some provisional rosters. And then, Brady and Gaga, they're 2 19-year-olds, that are that are in the mix here. So I think right now, I think really that's kind of where things stand a little bit.
Yeah, and it's not a problem. I think that's my biggest takeaway is it's a surprise because usually you just see 3 goalkeepers. It's not a problem. I mean, I don't think even Ethan Horvath is going to steal any minutes from Matt Turner in this camp. And if something goes wrong, there's plenty of U.S. based goalkeepers that could easily just make a trip to either East Hartford or Nashville. Any other surprises from this roster that you thought of?
Not really. I think CCV was a little surprised to me only because he had been injured, but I think he did get on the field yesterday.
Mhm.
Anthony Robinson, I think he's just recovering from. I think I saw some sort of sports hernia, so they're trying not to rush him for these games. Gives other players opportunities as well. I mean, the one that jumps out, I think, for most people is uh, Maloney. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, but
Yeah, Leonard Maloney. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, he had been rumored to be someone the U.S. was following and watching. I mean, he's 23, I believe, so I think at this time it's probably a good opportunity with Adams being injured, to get a look at him, right? I mean, he's been performing, and that's what these camps are for, right? Is to get look
Hmm.
at a player or two, and I think that's what that Greg is doing well right now. He's you don't bring too many people in, you bring a couple in, and you get a look at them, and I think he did that with Lund this time again, and I think that's important, to do that during these camps and try to set an expectation and get them in here and integrate them into the core group.
Yeah, that's a great point. He really doesn't have any youth national team opportunities left. He's 23, so I don't think he's going to be a part of that Olympic roster. That wouldn't make sense, even as like that older age player. Um, but Maloney, a team in Heidenheim that is 10th in the Bundesliga, I don't think they'll stay at that level. Um, but he provides possibly an answer to that question of who is the Tyler Adams backup. With he and Cardoso brought in, we've also seen Musa play that 6th position. I think it's very clear that we're moving on from Kellen Acosta, which is probably a good thing. My question, and I don't know if you have an answer, I don't know if there is an answer to this necessarily, is did Greg bring in Maloney to just to try to, get him into that camp just for the dual national recruitment purposes? Or, I mean, do you think this is a guy that Greg sees as someone who can contribute to the team right now?
I mean, I think it's probably a little bit of both, and he kind of fits that. He's in between, right? He's not a U23. So he's not going to participate in the Olympics. So, but he is a dual national, but there's not a huge demand on him at this point either, right? So like, there's not like, oh, Germany's going to take him away from us. So I think really, it's a little bit of both. I think he's taking a look at them. I think he'd like to bring in other dual nationals, and maybe that's part of the plan to do that each camp that he's able to do that. And I think maybe that's just a way to, he was maybe the only one that, you know, filled the position they needed on the field, as well as, that availability to want to come into camp. So I think it's kind of both, but he really falls into that bridge player for me, right? I think,
Yeah.
you know, he he could, if he does well, he's a backup, right? Potentially, or a backup option at least. And so, and I think we still have a lot of question marks, for some of those spots.
Well, and look, last camp we even saw Luca De La Torre play more of that sixth position when he was on the field for all of 20 some minutes. So even that's one of those of I think Greg is trying to figure out. It's very clear to me that is the biggest question that Greg Berhalter has right now is who plays that sixth position if Tyler Adams isn't there. I guess my what I would like to see from Greg is why do we have to play a single pivot? Why not try to put, you know, maybe it is Cardoso and McKinney or Cardoso and Musa kind of back there and let now that we have Gio Reyna back and we have Malik Tillman on this roster, why not let them be a kind of attacking mid? But that's asking Greg to change formation, and I think we both know that's a fruitless request.
Yeah, I think it's a smart move to do that though, especially against a little better competition. Just see what it works, right? See what doesn't work. That's what this is for, right? You've got to do all your due diligence, do all your you're playing here. For as much as I want them to win, I want them to win while pushing themselves to do different things, to look at different formations, to look at different tactics in here that works with the collective
Right.
roster group that we have of players, to see what they're capable of doing, and who fills roles or multiple roles, because that's what we need, right? If 23 per man roster, you need to have players that can play multiple positions at a high level, and so
Yeah.
and you've got to put them in the best positions for success.
Absolutely. And both Maloney and Cardoso, I would hope, get actual minutes in this camp because while I think to me personally, Musa or Luca makes sense in a CONCACAF setting, I am, and maybe Musa can play that at a higher level. Maybe we did see him play that fairly well in the Nations League, but I'm still not convinced that's the best option when we're playing a team like Germany or Ghana, who are very good individually and as a team. My last kind of, I don't know if this is a surprise or not, but by only taking one or two goalkeepers, you did have an extra spot at one of the other positions. Obviously, that was defenders because we brought in, I think, 27 center backs this time around, but only two forwards. I mean, I think it's again clear that it's Pepe, it's Balogun, but no one else. I mean, no Pifak, no Wright, no Ferreira. That does seem a little curious to me that we're not going with three forwards. We're continuing only with two.
Yeah, it's I think it's working right now, and I think in reality, I mean, that's kind of what's available too. I mean, right? None of the strikers you mentioned are really blowing us away right now, with their clubs. So I think, and Pepe and Balogun, that they're both scoring, they're both playing,
Yeah,
they're getting those minutes, and again, they're producing with the national team. So I think that kind of all collectively works together to say, this pairing's working right now for us.
yeah,
Let's bring that in. It's again that consistency and continuity of this team being, the same regular, 18 to whatever type of players every camp, is what's going to build, that team's, confidence, that team's, continuity with one another, to be able to go produce that out there. And I think now more than ever, I think that's going to matter, for this group going into Copa America next summer, and into the other tournaments we're going to see, heading into 2026.
well, and I think again, the question is, as you pointed out, we have, I think it's very clear, 15 to 18 guys. And so the question continually is, who are the other five that can make us better? Right? That's the goal. Can Maloney make us better? Can Cardoso make us better? Can Malik Tillman make us better? How can Gio Reyna be used to make us better? I'm hoping those are questions we can figure out. Um, any big misses? I mean, I was trying to really think about this, and I don't know if there's anyone who, other than injury guys or injured guys, I don't. There's no one that's screaming like, "Oh wow, I can't believe he didn't get called up."
Yeah, I mean, you could have called in a trustee. I think that's one that is a
But is he
possibility.
better than CCV? I mean, I generally don't
Well, I
know
mean,
because we haven't really
no,
seen them compare them,
well,
but that's the
right.
question, right?
Yeah, I think he's probably more preferred option and comfortable for Greg. He's just coming off injury, so I don't expect him to play a lot. I guess maybe selfishly, I just want to see Trusty with the team again. But
Totally.
again, there's no real like, oh well, this guy should have been called in, right? For sure. Um, at this point, and um, I think the important thing is that these players get an opportunity to actually play meaningful minutes in these matches, because that's the only way you're going to know if Cardoso can cut it. You know,
Right.
in my opinion, like I've been a big advocate of him, and I know Caleb hasn't, and I understand why Caleb feels that way. And I guess maybe I'm just more on the positive side of it, but I need to see him integrated with these, A squad players and be able to, you know, go out there and give a good shake on that. And honestly, I think starting for some of those players is a better opportunity. Coming on
Mm,
as a sub is always challenging. You're just trying to get into the flow of the game, depending on what it is, even if it's at halftime. I just think that you've got to give them a fair shake on that. And certain players, I think, are better suited. Obviously, Pepe to come off the bench and come out and produce. So I think when we look at those opportunities for those other players that are kind of on the fringe, in terms of whether or not they're going to be regulars on the 23 is important as well. So, but there's no real glaring omissions here. Obviously, we can mention John Brooks, and I will real quickly because he is performing well, and it was mentioned that he is on the depth chart for the center backs in a press conference with Greg this afternoon. So, I mean, he's one that I think I still want to see what he can do. Right, he's 30 years old. He's by far, uh, not old or washed up, and I think he deserves a more than one look. I would say you've got to give him a fair shake. I think.
yeah. Look, I don't want to get into the Twitter battles of why isn't John Brooks not being called up. I think it's very clear to me at this point that it's not how he plays or how he is playing. It I'm sorry, people, but it seems to be that he did something that affected the locker room to a great deal. Um, we've seen other players have kind of locker room issues, Weston, even Gio, that while Greg punished them, if you will, they were very much welcome back. It definitely seems that Brooks is not welcome back. It doesn't seem like even a lot of the other players are clamoring for him to come back either.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something that happened there, and my thought is this: I know you don't air dirty laundry, but at some point, I think
Right.
a definitive statement needs to come out of that either we're giving another look or this is not going to happen under this current management administration. And I think
Yeah.
I because it's I mean why would you want to continue answering questions over and over?
Right.
You know,
And that's the question too. Is like, would John Brooks be a better player, a better center back to any of the four that he called in? And the answer is probably yes. I mean, as much as Tim Ream has been really good, it would make sense for Brooks to be the veteran center back going forward because he is younger and probably going to be still playing it by the time the 2026 World Cup rolls around. Um, I'm just saying that it's very clear to me that this is a something happened where he is not welcome back into the team right now, and who knows if he's working on that or if Greg's just being stubborn. I know everyone likes to blame Greg for everything, but again, I'll just say that it doesn't seem like the other guys are missing him too bad. But let's move on from that. Looking at this roster as a whole, I think the starting lineups kind of write themselves. Again, the question for me now is who's playing that defensive mid position. But we have another position that I think is kind of up for grabs right now, and it's that left back. Dewan Jones, Christopher Lund, both in camp here. I'm curious which one gets the bulk of the minutes. I don't know if that means anything with Jedi. Jedi's out. Jedi's number one, but that is an interesting position battle we actually do get to watch during this camp.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to watch it for sure. I don't know where Scally even falls into it as well. I mean, he
That's
obviously
the other
plays.
question, right? Or
Right,
Death. I mean, it could be
right,
Death in the left scally on it. Yeah, who knows? But
right. It'll be interesting to see what he does on that because I mean, I think you have to. I mean, I think Ghana you can go up against them and um and kind of play your how you want to play. Germany, I think you have to have a plan in place a little bit for Germany. I mean, they're top tier, right? I
yeah,
mean, and so and so mind you, it's only a friendly, and who knows how they're going to play, but you have to go into that match a little bit differently in terms of how you're going to approach the tactics, how you're going to approach the game plan against them. I don't think you can go in and say, yeah, we're going to just play from the back because that doesn't work, right? It just doesn't work with that model. I don't know what it is, and this is where hopefully th- we see an improvement like with that. I mean, I play to your strengths, but also you have to kind of be smart about how you do
hmm
this because you do want to have a put a good show on, I mean, as well, with your top tier teams. And it's a statement, right? And this is an opportunity to get some eyeballs on you and to for this team to show what people what they have.
we know Greg does like to use friendlies, especially in these particular windows, as very experimental. I mean, I think his record in September friendlies is abysmal, and it is a lot of times because he's so focused on tactics and stuff that he doesn't really care about the actual game itself. He's more focused on you know doing what we've been practicing. I'm hoping in this camp, to your point, either we see the team willing to adjust like this would be a tournament level game rather than just we're forced to play it out of the back, which has put this team into a lot of problems in the past where we stick to that. I'm hoping that we are willing to say, okay, hey, this isn't working, let's switch in the game, because both of these teams, Ghana and Germany, are, in my opinion, in that top level of teams where you're likely to see both of these in a knockout round of a World Cup. You know what I'm saying? This is that quality, that caliber of an opponent. So you do need to treat this as a super competitive opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they've played a few matches under Greg against, some of the, better quality non-CONCACAF teams. They played Uruguay a while back, and that I think that was an interesting, I think that was a 1-1 tie against them. I think that was an interesting look, at what the team could do. I mean, that's,
hmm
again, at the time, Uruguay was pretty good. They played that match against Switzerland. Um, in Switzerland in 2021 before the Nations League. They lost that, 2-1. And I thought they played pretty well in that, match too, right? Against a different type of team. So, and I think the Switzerland match was better than the Uruguay one. But those are the types of things you've got to experiment a little in those matches, but you also go in with a game plan and see how you're going to attack and break it down and find where those opportunities are going to be to get those goals. Um, and to kind of shake things up a little.
Absolutely. And I think that's the benefit of these two opponents is that they are quality. Any last roster thoughts before we move on to looking at Germany and Ghana?
Yeah, I don't think I think the roster is, I think it's a good one, and I'm excited to see it.
Yeah. Look, I think it's very hard to find reasons to be mad about this roster because any of those reasons of why was an X player called up or whatever is just simply we know who the group is, if you will. There's 15 to 18 players that are going to be called in. Everyone else is just fighting for those last couple of spots. But yeah, let's move on to looking at the actual friendlies in this window. USA will be playing Germany and Ghana. Germany is on Saturday, October 14th at 3 p.m. They are playing in East Hartford, Connecticut. And then the Ghana match is on Tuesday, October 17th at 8:30 p.m. in Nashville, Tennessee, because we haven't played in Nashville recently enough, I guess. Um, I have issues with both of these locations, but it's fine. I don't want to get into host site selection converse. Actually, no, that's false. I do. We're gonna do it. I have two issues with this. First is I think the problem with East. I think we talked about this, but the problem I have with East Hartford is I don't think that stadium is the venue you want to play this showcase match, especially if you're saying we need it to be in the Northeast. I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong. You're a little more familiar with the area than I am, I suppose, but that stadium is just a college football stadium. Nothing else about it is very special, and it's very frustrating that we're still kind of resorting to that in for it's a 40,000 seat venue, so it's bigger than a soccer stadium. But I don't know. I just feel like should have found a better location.
No, I don't disagree with you. I don't. That is not. I mean, it's they played there before. They do all right there, but it's not a preferred location. My only thought on that location is just it was probably maybe easier for Germany to get in and out. I mean, obviously the match time is, conducive with,
Sure.
German fans being able to watch the match and that sort of thing in general. So I think there was a little, and maybe they had a little say too, because I mean, that's the one thing people don't understand when you make these agreements, to do that. I think the U.S., especially when you're playing a Germany type of country, I think they have to make some concessions in terms of, doing everything they can to get those contracts signed for those
Right.
matches, right? So that both nations have to kind of agree on the conditions of those. So I think logistics is probably part of that. I mean, but that being said, you could have still had that match somewhere in the Northeast with grass stadium, turf and all that other stuff that's needed to make it work out. So it is yeah, not my first choice either, even
Yeah.
though it's kind of in my backyard per se, but it's definitely you know I think they could have done better.
I just think my issue is like East Hartford is not exactly a place I think of that's easy to get to for anyone, let alone Germany. Um, Maybe I'm completely wrong, but it's just I'm sure it's in between. I guess it's in between Boston and New York, but you could have just played at either of those locations. But and then Nashville, hey, here we are again playing another game in Nashville. I just feel like U.S. Soccer has picked a couple of locations that they really like, especially when it comes to MLS or soccer size stadiums, if you will. And it seems like Nashville's on that list with about three or four others. I guess we're going to be playing here a lot now that they have the stadium.
Yeah, they're definitely not making any you know you know they're just going they're going to do what they're going to do with it. I don't think there's any consideration for any other regions of the country. As I said, I we meant to have it drop last window. I'm going to try to finish up the piece, but I have a piece that's I'm working on about venues, about venue options where they have or haven't played, and recommendations on that. I mean, they're comfortable with it. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into, doing everything to get the venue set up. So I think there's a comfortability with that. But if you want to, expand your reach, U.S. Soccer, you know, there are other venues, there are other
Yeah,
stadiums, that can support, whatever your, requirements are to do that. And
yeah,
so let's not forget that in this very important cycle to make sure that you're promoting U.S. soccer because that's what it's about. You're about promoting the men's team and promoting U.S. soccer, right? And getting interest in that. And so you've got to be able to touch those areas if you want to grow it a little bit from that perspective. Because soccer is growing on its own by Messi being here in the MLS. Fine, I think that's great. Don't forget, you have to grow your team and your support because it's that's gonna be huge going into that. You want to get in touch with those fans that are kind of fringe fans.
yeah. That's kind of my point about all of this is again, it seems like U.S. Soccer has selected I don't know maybe five or six stadiums that they really do enjoy, and it's very clear it's TQL, it's Geodis, it's Exploria in Orlando, it's Q2 in Austin, and maybe one of the ones in either St. Louis or Kansas City. And it just seems like that's where they want to play. And I get it to a lot of extent. I mean, we talked in the last episode about um, it. it's when we were talking about with the Atlanta getting the HQ, it's you're going to get more locations in Central or Eastern Standard Time or Eastern time zones because of two reasons. One, just flat out travel, right? If you're playing matches with, I mean, we have two guys on this roster specifically from MLS, right? Three from this hemisphere. So if the bulk of your team is from Europe, is playing in Europe, that travel has to be tightened. You can't be flying these guys to LA. You can't be flying them to Seattle. That's just the unfortunate reality is that almost doubles their flight time, you know. But again, it's unfortunate that we can't play in bigger venues for these bigger matches because Germany to me is an opponent that you should be trying to sell out a 60, 70,000 seat stadium for.
Yeah, I do question if they could get that from American fans. I mean, I think there's a combination of things. I think they want the soccer environment in these smaller stadiums. I think they can sell them up, but we're not even selling out the 25, 30,000,
Right.
capacity stadiums
I mean,
either,
that's
right?
the thing. This window specifically, if you're not selling out to watch Germany and Ghana with our A team, then I have questions about U.S. soccer and what they're doing to get people to the match because I can forgive a little bit St. Louis, who had already hosted a competitive match this year, not showing up for frickin' Uzbekistan. You know, like I mean, not 3/5 full or whatever it was, but like, I can forgive some people not showing up for that. But U.S. soccer does need to kind of take a look at themselves and go, why aren't people coming to these matches?
Yeah, because I think there's a formula a pricing formula that works to maximize fans and to maximize revenue, and I just don't
Yeah,
think they want to even go down that route. They're very hard and fast about that. They would rather have a 20,000, 20,000 fans in the stadium for a 30,000, capacity, venue. And so to me, they just don't get it. And so, because you want to give those opportunities. Like, look, I get their friendlies. They're not overly competitive, but guess what? This is the A squad, right? So fans want to see these players.
well, and that's again for me the concern is why isn't U.S. soccer pushing this and promoting our stars? Because we do have stars. We have Christian Pulisic, we have Weston McKennie, we have Serginho Dest. You know, these are flashy, good players. We have Gio Reyna. We now have a new guy with Flo Balogun and even Ricardo Pepi, who is a you know well-known figure. Um, and it's for me it's concerning. Right now, the resale value. So I guess this is good that they have a lot of resale tickets available for the game in New Hartford. Is the lowest price is $163. Again, that is a resale ticket. So I don't know what that person actually paid for. I forget what it was when I looked at it, but that's a lot of money. Once these scalpers, by the way, U.S. Soccer just renewing an agreement with Ticketmaster, so I'm sure that'll drive the price down. Not, um, you know, this is a problem we're facing countrywide with these ticket prices being so insanely steep because it could be bots buying these tickets and selling them for a ton of money after that, and that's another reason why we don't see people in the stands.
Exactly, and I said it. I said it last year, maybe even before then. The U.S. soccer has to promote these matches. I joke about it, but back in the '94 cycle, I remember it. They did a World Series of soccer, right? It was like an I don't know 8-10 match, whatever, right? And so they made it an event. They just made it right. There was nothing to it. They're just friendlies, but they made the event around that. Do that again,
Yeah,
do new jerseys every single create demand. There's money to be had here. I just don't know what they're doing. Like, I
yeah,
mean, maybe they're going to do it later in the cycle, but to me you've got to maximize every single opportunity when you're on home. So I don't expect them. I would be very shocked if we see them, other than the Nations League, play any road matches during this
yeah.
cycle outside of any
Which is sad. I really do hope. I mean, obviously, this November is Nations League, so we will have at least one um, road match there. I'm really hoping that we kind of had that November window settled as the go to Europe and play friendlies window, and I still think that's probably something that U.S. Soccer needs to push, because we're not going to be short of opportunities to watch this team play stateside in the next 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean they want the money, but for some reason they don't want to do it the right way to bring
Right.
them in there. It's just it's baffling to me. It's just an odd business model that they're following right now.
But we've got two legitimate opponents, so congrats to U.S. Soccer for getting that. And if we believe the reports that it was going to be Brazil and Argentina in September, I will give them credit for trying to schedule top opponents. And I mean, and you can talk about Ghana. Ghana's a very good opponent. They've beaten us twice in a World Cup. And the type of opponent that you will be seeing in knockout rounds of World Cups. These are two teams that can beat us, probably should, at least for Germany, probably should beat us, despite the troubles they have. What do you expect from these matches on the field?
You know, if you go back to some of the matches, I think when we played friendlies against quality teams, I think back to a couple Germany matches, a couple, you know, they're all in the Jurgen Klinsmann. He played the better quality teams. Competitive, high pace match, and maybe even high scoring match. Right? You're gonna see 5 goals maybe this match. 3-2 result, something like that. Like I want to see some of that out there. I want to see some of the things we haven't seen a little bit. I don't want to, these aren't matches you have to win, right? You want to win them, but you don't have to win them. And so I want to see that creativity from this team a little bit. I want to see them try different things out of
Mm-hmm.
it and take chances, because this doesn't matter. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, well, remember that the next time, right? And try that out, because I think that's where they have to, those opportunities for them have to be there to be able to know what this team can do against higher quality opponents, and that's Germany. Really, I think Ghana's a
Yeah.
match that should be tough, but I think it's one they should win as well, though.
Yeah, I think if you look at this, we should beat Ghana. I think Ghana absolutely can beat us, but Germany is right now, the way the Germans are playing, it is a little bit more of a toss up, especially in a friendly setting. Um, when you look at these two matches, though, and the players you have, first off, I think we didn't really talk about this, but let's hit on it. Gio Reyna back in the squad. Um, he and Greg reportedly talked. I'm not quite sure what the nature of those conversations, just that Matt Crocker said they talked. Again, I think we've discussed that there's probably a legit reason why Greg didn't talk to anyone from the Reyna family for a good time. One of those being very much legal reasons, the other one just because they, especially Claudio and Danielle, tried to ruin his life. But Gio's back. The question though is, how many minutes does he have? And so that's kind of the question I have about this whole roster, or this whole camp, is how much rotation do you want to see, or is it play the 9 guys you're sure of and then fill in 1 or 2 holes and try to rotate there?
Yeah, I think for Gio, I think coming back is gonna, it's gonna be like, seeing a close friend or spouse, girlfriend, whatever you haven't seen in a long time, and you're kind of doing that. The first interaction will be a little awkward, and I think they'll work through it, and they just need to move forward with that. As far as Gio playing, maybe give him 25 minutes in the second half, to come in and see what he can do, see if he can raise some havoc against some tired legs out there. But yeah, I think you want to see a core group of players play 60-ish minutes together, and give them that opportunity to go out there and put their best foot forward, and give it all they can against Germany, and see really how they stand up to them.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, especially for the Germany matches. Go out there and put your best lineup out there, whatever you think that may be. That could be Serginho Dest starting at left back and Joe Scally at right back. That could be it. But put your best 11 that you can get from this group out there. Give them 60 minutes, and if you need to make changes on those, however many players you were locked in for that game, for the Ghana game, make those changes if you want to, if you need to. Because what if it goes really well for Germany and you're like, oh yeah, then let's try this again against Ghana? Because again, we have legitimate matches that mean something in November. So we don't have a whole lot of time to play around with that. We do need to be prepared. And I know, you can laugh at whatever, but that it's a CONCACAF opponent, but you still have to win. And this is Copa America qualification, so you still have to win. So I'm with you. Put your best 11 that you can find out against Germany for 60 minutes to get them accustomed to that. I think it's very likely we don't have Tyler Adams in November just because the man can never seem to stay healthy. Um, so that is the area that I think you might rotate with, right? You could see a couple of midfield combinations from Germany to Ghana just because we are still trying to figure out what the best option there is. But yeah, I would personally just try to put your best 11 out there for both matches, give them a run out, and then make changes. Speaking of though, what do you think the best midfield combo is right now, without Tyler Adams, obviously?
I mean, if Gio's fully healthy, I probably play him at the 10 and with a McKinney Musa. That being said, I don't think he's not. I don't think he's in. He hasn't
Do
played
you put
much at
Malik
all.
in there, or do you like that's the question, right? Do you just
I
replace?
don't. I don't. I don't. I like Malik off the bench. I think
Okay.
again the energy off the bench. I think he's dangerous on corners. I'd probably go Luca De La Torre for as much as I want to see Johnny play. I think
Mm.
Luca, McKennie, and Musa are probably the best midfield piece in there. But Lucas, he I'll be interested to see him because I wonder how he's going to stand up against a higher quality opponent because he's pretty good against the mid opponent and definitely the lesser opponents. But I want to see kind of what he does there and how much possession he can have, how much dribbling into space he can do. I think those things are going to be kind of telling in there as well. So it'll be interesting what those combinations are. I I just can't see Greg starting anyone else in that. I mean, you might throw Malik in there, but if you were going to do that, I think we would have seen it on the last window against
Yeah.
two lesser quality teams.
Well, we did see Malik a little bit, so I guess that's why I wonder. But I don't know if you can translate what happened with Oman to either Germany or Ghana.
Right.
I think personally, I would, as much as I'd like to see Maloney or Cardoso, right? I think I'm with you that to me, Musa as your six, and then De La Torre and McKinney as your advanced midfielders is what I would prefer. I don't know if that's what Greg would prefer. I think in a match like this, I would rather Musa back there than De La Torre. Nothing against Luca. I just think that he is probably better in that holding position against teams like Uzbekistan and Oman, because I think people forget that the Uzbekistan match, we looked pretty darn good. I'm not going to say great, but we looked pretty darn good with Luca as that kind of holding midfielder because he is good at progressing the ball both with a dribble and a pass. But I don't know if that's going to be able to translate to Germany and Ghana.
Exactly. I think that's something we're going to learn, which is I think important to learn.
Well, during these two match windows, we're going to have two U23 friendlies coming up. That's exciting. The roster will be coming out on Friday. We're recording this on Thursday, so we won't be talking about that U23 roster. I am curious what type of players we'll get because it is being done fully within the FIFA window. We have a game on October 11th and October 17th. So both of those are within that FIFA window, playing Mexico and Japan down in Phoenix. I think we mentioned at the top, Chris Brady, Gaga Slonina, probably Paxton Aronson, I would imagine, is and part of this, as well as some other, guys that we saw at that U20 World Cup. But I guess my question on this is, are you glad we're finally playing these types of friendlies?
I am. I've been a huge advocate for them for a long time. You have if you're serious about your youth program, you can't forget about the U23s. The thing is, you just can't throw a bunch of U23 players in like they did the last time, right? You can't throw a Jackson Newell in there. You can't throw Williams in there. You've got to really say, look, we're gonna make this like a U20 plus to like U22, right? Like find that core group of players. I mean, you look at some of the available players, within that, age
Well,
window.
shoot, we still got some of those guys on the senior national team.
Well, you
That's,
do. I mean, you
again,
do,
that's
but
the problem we keep cutting into.
right. And so, like someone like a Kate Cowell, is available. Caleb Wiley,
Yeah,
Paxton Aronson, uh, you've got Tolkien, Busio. Like you've got players in
yeah,
there. You got, you look at how many. There were some quality, like McGlynn and Luna um, from the last U20 World Cup. There's a handful of players in
yeah,
there that are some pretty good quality, and if you can get those players released for this, you could be really competitive, and you can really kind of build that depth and experience at that level. And I think that's the key part of it. You've got to build that experience and depth at that level a little bit more. You've got to you do it for half the cycle. And kind of try to get the
yeah.
same group in there. And I think the problem is that releasing of the players. It's not a FIFA tournament. It's there's no requirement to release these players. And we've heard other players like Pulisic and Musa saying they want to play in the Olympics. Technically, they could after the Copa Americas, but
Yeah, I
whether
don't.
the club release them, I just don't see it happening. I mean,
Yeah,
Neymar played in the Olympics, at one point. Kind of, I don't know, on the crux of his uh prime career. So that it's possible they get released, but there's no real incentive for clubs to be doing that, right? And I think that's kind of the problem too, is that for some, FIFA does not promote this tournament at all. They can't wear their, we can't wear their normal
you can't. Yeah,
crests,
you can't even wear the crest. You have to.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
uh,
there's a bunch of things in there that just kind of changed over time. So it's if you could put your best out there, I think you could put a pretty exciting group out there. I mean, really.
by the way, hot take alert. I think FIFA / the IOC should also make the women's tournament a U23.
Yeah, and that's interesting. That the rules are different for those in general,
Yep.
and I would agree with that. I mean, it's
I
nice
think
to meet
it's
both
insane to
levels.
ask the women to play back to back, like senior national team tournaments.
Yeah,
In like it's back to back summers like that. But anyway, um, I'm with you though. I want to try to build the U23 group team. We only get 18 players to go to that tournament. Try to build this roster, and I'm sure that this is easier said than done with the players that are going to be available and able to go to that tournament next summer. I say that's easier said than done because I'll take Caleb Wiley for a prime example. Um, a guy who's balling out with Atlanta has really, become an integral piece of the team, both as a left wing, but now as a left back where he kind of belongs. There's a very real chance that Atlanta United sells him next summer or this winter, even just because of, you know, teams could be looking at him. So Atlanta United may very well, I also think of a guy like Tolkien or, even Chris Brady, for an example. They're playing very well. Their clubs and MLS very well may say, yeah, take them for the Olympics. That's great. We know that them playing at the Olympics is going to make their value rise, all that kind of stuff. If they're sold before next summer, that goes out the window. So again, easier said than done, but I think this is a great opportunity to get that group together and start building 9 months before the tournament.
yeah. I'm a little disappointed that the Pan American Games didn't allow for that group to play in there. Timing is never great for that, but
Yeah. And we're
but I
doing
think
we announced it as U19, not like a U22 thing, which is also a little weird for us.
yeah,
But
because I think it is. I think it is a U22.
it's weird. I'll tell you why I think it's weird. Okay. Go with me on this. So we said U19, US did, right? That's specific to the US. I think, as you said, Pan American is U22. Um, there is an age limit, but it's not that. It's basically the Olympics, right? We have a U17 World Cup the next month. So to me, to put your cap at 19 for the men, especially when you have the U set, like that's you're limiting the amount of players you could get, and you might have to dip into that U17 pool. I don't know if they will, but I think it's a little short sighted for us to not send a U22 roster. Now that could change. We're not beholden to that, as you said. Pan American Games, you can do U22s, but I'm curious why we wouldn't do that, and it would again make sense that you have you would have that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
and it's a
sure
big
there's decisions being made that we don't know about.
and it's a big jump. We're not, when we talk about U17 to U20, it's a big jump in terms of quality, right? And
Yeah,
so, U20 to U22, it's, I don't know if it's as big of a jump, but it's still big enough where, like, if you're going into tournaments, you want to go into tournaments to win it. So you gotta make the choices in
right,
terms of as best you can, player selection, all these sorts of things, the best position yourself. Again, these tournaments don't align well with anything, right? They don't align with MLS season or the European or any of those sorts of
right.
things. U.S. soccer has to get somewhat creative with that, in
Weirdly, this
general.
might align with Leagues Cup next summer, so maybe that's a blessing in disguise.
Maybe.
I just want to point out one thing real quick because you did not get to talk about the Atlanta being chosen as the new HQ, but I think you would agree with that. This right here. So we're playing in Phoenix these matches, and we're bringing Mexico and Japan in as well. So they're also playing. We got to house them and let them train. We're playing at the Phoenix Rising Complex, which is very nice from what I can tell and from what I've watched on TV and whatnot. Um, Nice big complex, but U.S. Soccer is renting that. That's essentially what's happening here. Having a central HQ and training center makes things like this so much easier. And I'm thinking, to me, that's just like, again, I don't know how the senior national teams will utilize the training facility and the HQ because they play matches all over the country. But for youth national teams, I think the training center is invaluable, which means your senior national teams, in theory, should also improve. And this is just an example of, if when the HQ is built in Atlanta, um, you're having these, say, a U20 pre-camp type of thing where you invite Mexico or Canada or someone else to have friendlies during a FIFA window at a facility that you own and not rent.
Yeah, there's been discussion, you know, for decades, should U.S. soccer, leave Chicago, and should they have a central, you know, location for certain things? And I think Atlanta's a good selection for this, really. It's, kind of all seasons for them. There's space for it. They can build that. They're getting a lot of money to what is it, 500 million to do this.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it. I mean, I think, Chicago, I don't know. I never understood that. I just never understood that, that location for the federation. And I think having it more East Coast bound is going to be helpful for European talent. It's going to be a spot where players can recover if they need to. We've seen, players come to the U.S. and, do some recovery. Gio did it,
Yeah.
a while back, right? And he came in, I think he went, to Austin when his dad was there and did some recovery there. But, like, I think it's a surprising move, but I think it's a really smart move for U.S. soccer. I'm excited for it.
Yeah. I am personally very excited because I live in Atlanta, but I think this is overall a good move for U.S. soccer. And again, it's not always about the senior national teams; it's about building the foundation below that, so the senior national teams are put in the best position as well. Um, Last question before we get out of here: we're going to have 6 countries host the 2030 FIFA World Cup. By the way, this announced way before they have even selected the host for the 2027 Women's World Cup, which is in 3.5 years. I guess they don't need to have a host get on to the planning of that, but whatever. 6 countries and on 3 continents. Your thoughts, Thomas?
I'm gonna keep it simple. Like the co-host, dual host is becoming a regular thing. I'm fine with bordering countries doing that. I have no issues with that. I think it'll work very well in '02. I think it's gonna work great in 2026. Um, this makes no sense to me. Like, I mean, I understand why. Like you want to. It's like having an Olympics in multiple, um, you know, just spread out, like having it
Yeah,
all in New England, right? Like, you could do it, it may be successful, but, like, there's something, they want to have a central spot where this stuff is going on. I know it's, 3 matches, but there's there's travel logistics on this that just, to me, don't make any sense.
yeah.
Um,
You're
and
going from like one end of the world to the other, literally.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. I don't think it's fair to the players. I don't think it's even fair to the fans of the countries that they're
I agree.
doing the one match in. I mean, like, I don't hear. I don't know if it's official, but I don't know if the logistics piece of it, if this means, oh, this is your slot, now you can't apply for another one type of situation. I don't know the rules because FIFA's rules were pretty clear. I think, you know, obviously CONCACAF wasn't eligible, and Asia wasn't eligible for the 2030 World Cup bids. So South America and Europe were kind of the top two tiers on that. So I don't know if this eliminates South America for the next
Mhm.
one, right? Because of
Yeah, they're only
the
getting 3 total matches. Like
right.
yeah. So
It's not a World Cup
who
like
gets 2034? Does it go back to Asia immediately? Which it might. Which at this point looks like it'll be Saudi Arabia. I'm sure
right.
that'll
And
go
so
over well again.
if it's Saudi Arabia, then and that actually happens, I mean the the corruption in FIFA remains, because that
Yeah.
to me is just disgusting,
Yeah.
to me, because I think you do it in these countries for one, the fans, and to build the game, right? We've
Right.
always talked about building the game. I don't know, you know, and at this point, I think you need to have the infrastructure in place before you're given, these
And
bids.
that's a legitimate point though, because I don't think Uruguay and Paraguay have that structure. They don't have a whole lot of stadiums. Argentina does. Now, granted, like 90% of those are even in Buenos Aires. So it's not like they have a vast network of stadiums. So that I think that's just a valid point though as we move forward, is you need to have these stadiums already in place. And so when you look at a Spain, Portugal, Morocco, they have the size stadiums. Portugal is going to struggle a little bit to hit that, but they have existing stadiums they can just expand, right? This isn't Qatar where we're building something out of nothing and literally building out from scratch. So I don't know. I'm with you that the logistics of this seems insane. I think it's unfair to both sets of hosting groups, right? I think it's unfair to Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay to not be able to have the whole tournament there to celebrate the 100th year of the inaugural FIFA World Cup. I think it's also unfair to Spain, Portugal, Morocco to not be able to have the celebration of kicking off World Cup like that. And I understand that they want to celebrate the centenario of the FIFA World Cup, but it just feels so obviously about money. And that's really sad.
Yeah, if they want to celebrate, you just have it there, and
Right.
do it the way do it the right way, in my opinion. Like, you
Because
just
I'm with
don't.
you. Like, we're going to have multiple countries hosting. Very few countries, I mean, very few, even the US would struggle to host a 48 team World Cup the way that it's going to be played out. I mean, sincerely. So you're going to need multiple countries to host. So it doesn't even bother me that we're doing the Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, or the Spain, Portugal. Like, all three of those, or both of those little groups make sense to me. Like, sure, yeah, do it. It's the trying to combine it is,
Oh yeah, I again, complete total money grab, I guess. I don't know. It just to me, the whole thing has become disjointed, because they see what the value is. They're going to be blown away by how much attendance, how much money, how much everything comes out of 2026. The records are, I mean, they broke the records in '94.
yeah.
The
And now
attendance
you're
records.
adding Mexico, a soccer crazed nation,
Right. I
you
mean,
know.
it's gonna be massive, and they already see that, right?
Hmm.
And so now it's just like, well, let's try to hit it on. And so that's, when we have talk about, World Cup twice a cycle or whatever it is. And so that's the thing. Like, they can't wrap their head around the situation, and they're just going hog wild, kid in the candy store, right? And they, without any thought or consideration for anything.
It's a shame because 2014 legitimately was a great World Cup, but we saw the problems in Brazil with a not super financially stable country hosting it. Luckily for Brazil, you had the Olympics the next 2 years in Rio, so they were reusing several of those facilities. Um, but it really is a shame that after 2010, we've just seen the World Cup become something that is so obviously toyed with by FIFA decision makers just to squeeze as much money as possible out of it. And it's sad because we just saw a women's World Cup that fairly organically was very successful. Now, I want FIFA to obviously support the women's World Cup more, but they go too far to tinker with everything on the men's side, and it's unnecessary. I mean, it's super unnecessary.
Yeah. I mean, look, I love international soccer, so I mean, I'm not opposed to a twice cycle, World Cup thing, but I am opposed to like doing it in this manner, right? Like I don't, it's like the countries that want it, let them celebrate it. Let them engulf it over a
Right,
month period of time,
right.
right? Like, don't just gonna flash in the pan and say, oh yeah, I could, or whatever it is. Like, that's not fair. That's not fair to the fans. That's not fair to the countries, you're pulling into this. Like, make it right for them because there's a lot of money that gets infused in those countries. In South America, I'm sure they could use it, to do a lot of great things. And I don't know because you learn a lot about the culture and the countries when they do that, and in the way they've been doing that. And now you're just saying, yeah, we're just going to do the first three matches and do everything else, on the other end, and just kind of rush our way through it. In a manner that, in my opinion, it's just very selfish. I'm hoping that hopefully they'll change their mind. Um, you know, it's a long way off, so they could easily make a change of that and award.
I I would like FIFA to make it. I mean, it's not going to happen, but they need to make a decision on the 2027 Women's World Cup because I think to me that's the other thing is like this should have already been. You should have known this before the 2023 edition who's hosting, and you have
Yeah.
people who want to host, and you have legitimate bids, and you just need to pull the trigger on it because again, you need to allow these countries time to prepare. I'm not even mad that we have what is it 2023, so we've got 7 years for all six of these countries to prepare. That's great, love that, but
Uh, I actually think it's going to be the U.S. I think that's why it doesn't matter, right?
really,
They don't have they
I
don't
mean, I'm
have to
happy
prepare.
for it. US and
Uh,
Mexico, they run it back. I'm here for it.
they don't have to prepare, right? They're doing it now. Even if they didn't do it now in 2026, we could host a World Cup every year in the United States, right?
We could,
We have the
and
infrastructure in place.
legitimately, you add Mexico, that just makes everything even so much grander now because they have massive soccer stadiums as well.
Well, exactly. I mean, I just think it's in place because you're right. It is crazy that they haven't announced a host in
Yeah,
that period of time because usually they give 10 years to
yeah. I
these
mean,
countries to prepare.
it's the hosts. Obviously, if you're looking at I think the three most legitimate possibilities: USA, Mexico, um, Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, and then Brazil is a solo host. I think Brazil and the US make the most sense from a they could host it right now. They're ready to go. The Belgium, Netherlands, Germany one is a little just too like they're trying to force something there. But that makes to me what you just said a lot of sense because it's but they still have to vote, right? Like that's what I don't understand. It's like where is this? I don't know. I don't know. Anyway,
I mean, did they actually vote on the? I mean, I haven't followed that closely. Did they actually vote
yeah,
on
they
this?
they voted because it was between if I remember correctly, it was between Australia, New Zealand, and Colombia. And they did vote. And, they went through the bid process and chose the Australia New Zealand bid, which makes a whole lot of sense. It was a great tournament. And I'm not even, it it worked very well. It worked very well also because Australia, New Zealand have the infrastructure, have the stadiums. So, again, you're not building brand new stadiums for the Women's World Cup. I get that. But Australia still had to put a lot of money into beefing up their stadiums and getting it ready for FIFA because it's not just like you open the doors and say, hey, let's host it. There's tons of modifications these stadiums have to go through just to get ready to host the tournament. So I'll get off my soapbox, but it just is annoying. We got two games coming up next week, Germany and Ghana. Two legitimate games with our A team. I think we have a lot to be excited about from that standpoint. Thomas, any parting thoughts before we head out of here?
No, I'm just excited to see this A group, come together for a second window and have a little bit more quality opponent and see what they can do out there.
I will echo that. I'm very excited to watch our best players play soccer again. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at USKeeper and make sure you follow the show at SoccerForUS Pod. Also support the show at buymeacoffee.com/SoccerForUsPod. Thanks everyone for listening. I'm Bart. I'm out.